Kiza floor. The heart is a muscular organ which pumps blood through the vessels of the circulatory system. The heart is well enclosed within the inferior mediastinum and the middle cavity of the thorax. The heart is flanked on each side by the lungs. Its size is about a person's fist and weighs less than a pound. There are 4 coverings and wall of the heart, and these are the pericardium, epicardium, myocardium, and endocardium. The pericardium is a double-walled sac containing the heart, fibrous, and serous layer. The myocardium is a muscular tissue of the heart. The epicardium is a serous membrane that forms the innermost layer of the pericardium and the outer surface of the heart. And lastly, the endocardium, which is the innermost layer of the tissue that lines the chambers of the heart. Chambers and associated great vessels. The 4 hollow chambers, which are the 2 atria and 2 ventricles. The interventricular or interatrial septum, which divides the heart longitudinally. The superior and inferior vena cava, which receives oxygen-poor blood from the veins. The heart consists of 4 chambers, 2 atria and 2 ventricles. There is a valve through which blood passes before leaving each chamber of the heart. The valves prevent the backward flow of the blood. These valves are actual flaps that are located on each end of the 2 ventricles. They act as one-way inlets of blood on one side of a ventricle and one-way outlets of blood on the other side of a ventricle. Normal valves has 3 flaps except for the mitral valve, which only has 2. The 4 heart valves are the following: the tricuspid valve, which is located between the right atrium and the right ventricle, the pulmonary valve, which is located between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery, the mitral valve, which is located between the left atrium and the left ventricle, and the aortic valve, which is located between the left ventricle and the aorta. An artery is a vessel that conducts blood from the heart to the periphery. All arteries carry unoxygenated blood except for the pulmonary artery. The systemic circulation is part of the vascular system that carries blood from the left ventricle to organs and tissues of the body. The aorta is the major artery of systemic circulation, and it is also the largest artery and is divided into 4 parts: ascending aorta, aortic arc, thoracic aorta, and abdominal aorta. What is an arteriosclerosis? Arteriosclerosis, also known as cardiovascular arteriosclerosis, is a heart condition that occurs when an arteries grow thick and stiff and restrict blood flows to organs and tissues in the body.
Hello, madam. I am Maria P.D. GUZMAN, and I am going to discuss the cardiac circulation of the physiology of the heart, cardiac cycle, and how it sounds, and lastly, about the stroke and its effect to the cardiovascular system. So, when we say cardiac circulation of blood, it comes into the right atrium from the body, move into the right ventricle, and push into the pulmonary arteries in the lungs. So now let's move on to the systematic and pulmonary circulation. So what is pulmonary circulation? So when we say pulmonary circulation, it is the movement of the blood from the heart to the lungs, from oxygenation, then back to the heart again. So oxygenated is depleted blood from the body leaves, then the systematic circulation when it enters into the right atrium through the superior and inferior venae cavae. So next is systematic circulation. So as for the systematic circulation, it is the movement of blood back to the heart. So oxygenated blood enters the left atrium from the pulmonary veins. Now, I'm going to talk about the physiology of the heart. The cardiac physiology is the study of the healthy, unimpaired in function of the heart, involving blood flow, myocardium structure, the electrical conduction system of the heart, the cardiac cycle, and any other cardiac output interact and depend on one another. So, the heart itself is made up of 4 chambers. We have the 2 atria and the 2 ventricles. The oxygenated blood returns to the right side of the heart via the venous circulation. It is pumped to the right ventricle and then to the lungs, where carbon dioxide is released and oxygen is absorbed. So now let's talk about the stroke and its effect to the cardiovascular system. So stroke is a type of cardiovascular disease. It affects the arteries leading to and within the brain. A stroke occurs when the blood vessels that carries oxygen and nutrients to the brain is either blocked by a clot or burst. So how does stroke affect your cardiovascular system? So having a stroke increases a person's risk for cardiac trouble. Some of the same risks that can lead to a stroke can also make a heart problem more likely. Actually, these factors include high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, coronary artery disease, and heart arrhythmias.
The circle of Willis is an important junction of arteries at the base of the brain. The structure encircles the middle area of the brain, including the stalk of the pituitary gland and other important structures. Two arteries called carotid arteries supply blood to the brain. They run along either side of the neck and lead directly to the circle of Willis. Each carotid artery branches into an internal and external carotid artery. The internal carotid artery then branches into cerebral arteries to internal carotid arteries to pass through the circle of Willis. The circle of Willis is critical as it is the meeting point of many important arteries supplying blood to the brain. The internal carotid arteries branch off from here into smaller arteries which deliver much of the brain's blood supply. It allows for proper blood flow from the arteries to both the front and the back hemisphere of the brain. When it comes to blood flow, if a blockage or narrowing slows or prevents the blood flow in the connected artery, the change in pressure can cause blood to flow forward or backward in the circle of Willis to compensate. Importantly, the circle of Willis does not actively carry out the function. Instead, the natural shape of the circle and the way pressure acts in the area simply allow for bidirectional blood flow when necessary. Now let's talk about atherosclerosis, sometimes called hardening of the arteries. This occurs when fat, cholesterol, and calcium build up inside the lining of the artery wall, forming a substance called plaque. Over time, the fat and calcium buildup narrows the artery and blood flow through it. This theory, response to injuries, suggests that atherosclerosis develops as a result of repetitive injury in the inner lining of the artery. Now we're going to talk about the hepatic and the fetal circulation. The hepatic circulation or the hepatic portal system is a system of veins comprising the hepatic portal veins and its tributaries. The liver consumes about 20% of total body oxygen when at rest, so the total liver blood flow is quite high. Blood flow to the liver is unique in that it receives both oxygenated and partially deoxygenated blood. Now we're going to talk about fetal circulation. In animals that give live birth, the fetal circulation is the circulatory system of a fetus. The term usually encompasses the entire fetal-placental circulation, which includes umbilical cord and the blood vessels within the placenta that carry fetal blood. Instead of blood flowing to the lungs to pick up oxygen and then flowing to the rest of the body, the fetal circulation shunts or bypasses most of the blood away from the lungs. In the fetus, blood is shunted from the pulmonary artery to the aorta through a link of blood vessels called the ductus arteriosus. Next, we're going to talk about pulses. Pulse is the representation of the human cardiovascular system. It is measured to check the state of the human cardiac cycle. When the heart pumps blood, the blood's impact on the elastic wall creates a pressure wave. This pressure wave is measured as the pulse in the human body. The pulse can be measured at some points of the human body: radial artery, carotid artery, brachial artery, femoral artery, popliteal artery, abdominal aorta, dorsalis pedis, posterior tibial arteries, and temporal and facial pulses. Next to that, we're going to talk about pressure points. Pressure points refers to an area on the human body that may produce significant pain or other effects when manipulated in a specific manner. Lastly, we're going to talk about blood pressure. Blood pressure is the pressure of the circulating blood against the walls of blood vessels. Most of this pressure released from the heart pumping blood through the circulatory system. Your blood pressure is recorded as two numbers: the systolic blood pressure and the diastolic blood pressure. The systolic blood pressure is the first number. This indicates how much pressure your blood is exerting against your artery walls when the heart beats. The diastolic pressure, on the other hand, indicates how much pressure your blood is exerting against your artery walls while the heart is resting between beats, and this can be seen as the second number.